Hi, everybody. JB back here again with part two of my series about our mom. I keep claiming her myself. Phydella Gilbert Hogan, mother, musician, poet. This is a part two. Um, Before I get going on here, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping from the first video. Remember, I talked about her father, Dad Gilbert's nickname for her when she was little, called her Tutor. Well, when I was talking about our Uncle Bob Falls, I forgot Uncle Bob was a very big man. His nickname for Granny was Burley, which is to me just extremely humorous. The idea of her being Burley is more than I could stand. Anyway, so it was a great nickname. Anyway, I want to do another thing real quick. I just want to go through all of us siblings real fast for you real quick. Bill was born in 1936 in Seneca, Missouri. Martha was born in 1937 in Nevada, Missouri. Jill was born in 1940 in Nevada, Missouri. And she lost a girl, Carol, in 1942. And I may have to clean this up later on, but I believe that, so unfortunately, that was in Nevada, Missouri, too. In Nevada, they lived for at least some portion of the time in Smelter Hill, which was a real poor working class neighborhood up there. And then I was born in 1945 back down here in Arkansas, at Zion, Arkansas. And one other thing from our Calipat days I kind of forgot was that before I went on to the service, she had begun working as a bookkeeper for an electric company there in Calipat, and that would bode well for her future if she would do that for many years afterwards. Okay, so let's go into grand tribute part two. This is a picture of her in Lincoln, I think about 65 to 67 range, something like that, I think. This is when she was with the old fiddlers group there and her playing her banjo. This has always been one of everybody's favorite pictures. But anyway, so what happened was in 1964 in the summertime, I joined the Air Force and left California. I left her there alone, at least in the home alone, but what family was there. And by early 65, she had moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, where my brother Bill was living. And this was a pattern of her life from then on, that she always lived in a town where one of her kids were. Anyway, so this is the beginning of part two. Okay, so the Lincoln years, poetry and more. There's a picture of my brother Bill. That's one of those publicity shots from the 70s. It's kind of fun to look at. And one of the things I was going to point out here is he had a band for many, many years, and Gran played in the band, different things. She actually played bass in the band a lot. I don't, I was too dumb at the time. I imagine she was like a really smooth and good bass player, but I don't know for sure, but I'm certain that she was. Anyway, so she joined poetry clubs and things up there in Lincoln, and this is some of the members of that club. You can see Gran standing here, leaning against that chair next to the white-haired man. That white-haired man is Dr. John G. Nyhart. You might not have heard of him, but when I show you the next thing, you may remember him. Dr. Nyhart, I think, passed in '73. He was a professor at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, a well-known man and a famous scholar. And one of the things that he did, this is what he did. He wrote or collected the story, however you want to say it, of Black Elk Speaks, which is one of the most important books of the 70s about Native Americans that had been published at that time, because it gave the perspective of the Native American rather than about the Native American from a white person's point of view. Great book. I remember reading it and just devouring it. So anyway, so that's what Dr. Nyhart was actually part of their poetry group. So that was pretty cool. And okay, so during this time, she starts to get a lot more publications done. And you notice I've got Lincoln Sun in parentheses. That was a little newspaper there in Lincoln. And she wrote many, many columns for them, usually the homespun reminiscences of days gone past. Because should point out that with the exception of like automobiles, people of my mother's age, our mother's age, were basically living in the 19th century, halfway into the 20th century, with the exception of something there, maybe the chainsaws and automobiles. It was pretty much, there's no electricity and that sort of thing. Excuse me. Anyway, so here's an example on one of the publication. She was in the Rainbow Trail of publication in the Nebraska Midwest Federation of Chaparral Poets. That's what they're, I believe the poem Apple Crop is in this particular issue. And the other thing that she did, she became a bookkeeper. I've got this company here, Guarantee Clothing. This is her in the basement of Guarantee Clothing. O Street is the main east-west road, runs right through the heart of Lincoln, right downtown. And Guarantee Clothing was at 12th and O. Grand lived right around the corner there for a long time. But anyway, she worked at Guarantee Clothing, and she worked for Simon and Leon Nevsky, a father and son. And this, remember I said she was resourceful all her life, like when I was a kid, I would get fed, restaurant food all the time. and when up here, she would get us clothes, coats, everything was a second. Magically became a second when we needed a coat or a pair of boots or something like that. And they would be really, really cheap. So she was really, really good at that, and one of her great skills. and then I think the next thing I have, remember I mentioned they had a little entrepreneurial thing to her and Bill in particular, and they opened Hogan Music Company out on West P Street in Lincoln. This is out away from town a little ways at that time, West P Street. I have to make the joke in Lincoln when you live there. One of the favorite jokes is to go, I went down to 12th and P. I had to go to 12th and P. So it's a little joke that's always there with that P Street. Anyway, probably shouldn't have told that joke. Then I just wanted to do one here for a second called The Critters, Granny and her pets. She had this little doggy Cherokee. It was a sweet little doggy for years and years and years up in Lincoln. I can't remember if he made it to Van Buren or not when she lived there. He was a sweet little dog, and I remember him at the store up, the Hogan Music Store. She was always really good to her pets, and they were a real loving relationship. And then down here in Fayetteville, I laugh every time I see this guy. This is her cat. I call him Zeke. His full name was Sanford Andrew Hezekiah Corley, which was the actual name of one of her granduncles. His name was Sanford Andrew Hezekiah Corley Stringfield. That was his full name. So that was Zeke's actual full name. And the reason I get tickled is because he was kind of a crazy cat. He had all kinds of funny stuff. I really liked him. And to make a point here, you can see him laying on the ground there. She would not move that cat for anything. And I've actually seen her. Her legs were asleep when the cat got off. She couldn't even walk for a while. So she had a real loving relationship with her pets. Okay, so after Lincoln, she was up in Lincoln about 15 years. It seemed like she was there for centuries to me, but it was about 15 years. Moved down to Van Buren where Martha and Kirby were living, and she opened a Hogan Music Store there, which was featured in The Blue and the Gray, by the way. And here's a little ad for it too, the Hogan Music Company. And Martha told me this phone number, 474-0255. That's exactly the same number she had in Lincoln. It said the prefix was different. I thought that was kind of a cool thing. It made it easier to make her cards there. And then for just a little while, she lived by Joe up in Seneca, where Bill had been born many years ago. This is a picture here from 1985 when I was kind of first coming back and connecting back in this part of the country after having been gone a long time. And this is Joe up front. I'm not going to identify everybody, there's too many people there, but this is Joe up front right here in the camouflage shirt. There's Bill and there's me, and then there's Martha back there. And this is Martha's late husband, Kirby. This is Bill's ex and late ex-wife, Shanna. Okay, so after that, then she comes back home finally to Fayetteville. Martha and Kirby are here again. They've moved up here too. She's retired, and she decides she wants to go to college. And so one of the things she did is she took because remember, she only had an 8th grade education. She took the GED, and the story is that the lady that gave her the test said it was the highest score they'd ever had on the GED, which doesn't surprise me because she read all her whole life, just devoured books her entire life. Excuse me. So by the spring of 1985, she's enrolled at the University of Arkansas. You know, when you're over 65 or 60, you can take a whole bunch of, I think you can go free actually. But anyway, she took a whole, enrolled there and took classes at the U of A. That's a picture of Old Main. If you're not familiar with U of A campus, it's looking southwest out of Fayetteville. And here's I like this little picture of her. This is her 1989 U of A card. And I marked out her numbers there because I don't want anybody to use them even though she's gone. No reason for that. Anyway, so she started in 85, and not too long after she got going there, not more than a couple of years or so, I think, she took a class with folklorist Professor Bob Cochran. They became fast friends, and which would lead to, as you've already seen, the singing is on. I'll talk about it later on. And here's a cool picture. During that time, Bob was working on. Here's Gran on the left. There's Bob, and there's Aunt Helen, her sister that I've talked about before. And anyway, so she did very well, and of course, I should point out, as I had a little bit before, being such a personal person, she had just tons of friends up there. Professors really liked her, that sort of thing, and had I swear I can tell, a really great time. I visited her a couple of times, and it seemed like she had lots and lots of friends. Anyway, so she graduated from the U of A with honors in '92, and here's her graduation cum laude from the U of A, English major. We're all English majors. What a shock, huh? Notice that her spelling of her name is Phydella. She found that on one of the old Fidellas that was spelled that way, pronounced Phydella, but spelled that way. So she changed that spelling a lot of times on things. Okay, so and even a store was named after her. This way, some of you probably remember this. This is Miss Phydella's Art and Antique Galleries at the southeast corner of Maple and College here in Fayetteville. And that name was arrived at by her granddaughter, Sophia Estes, and Gran. They worked together and came up with that name. Sophia was the co-owner of this store. So Gran even she also had a little softball team that was sponsored by Miss Phydella too, that her great-granddaughter, Ryan Estes, played on. Ryan Estes Crawford, excuse me now. Okay, now I got this one. I'm calling this Hanging with Some Guys. So this is a picture of her with Jimmy Driftwood. She went down to Timbo, Arkansas, where he had his barn, and she played there. And the story goes there that when they were jamming after the show, Jimmy played a song he didn't think she knew and said, well, you can just whatever. And she immediately picked it up and played along with it. When he got in there, said, well, we couldn't lose you, could we? So he was probably surprised at how good a musician she was. And then this guy was also down there, I believe, Book Miller Shannon, when they were playing. There's Gran on banjo in the back. And this guy, I didn't know him very well. I looked him up. He was actually recorded by Alan Lomax, the famous folklore guy that recorded all the blues people and folklore people, folk singers all in the 20s, 30s, and I guess 40s, and even into the 50s. I don't know how long he did it, but he recorded a lot of them. And then the third picture is Gran with Tom T. Hall, the famous country singer. Tom T. published a book of short stories to the University of Arkansas Press. He was friends with the director of the press, Miller Williams, the well-known poet. And so that's just some hanging with some guys. And as she's got older, and later you can see her graduation, she was 74 when she graduated. And there's a nice article here from the Springdale Morning News about her graduating and about the publication of Matchsticks, her book of poetry, which I'm going to read from in the next video. And that was in '92 when she graduated. 4 years later, in '96, at the 7th Annual Northwest Arkansas Women's Festival and Conference, she was given one of the WISE Awards, a Woman in Significant Endeavors. That was a real nice award. And here is a picture of Sophia Estes, her granddaughter, helping her up to the stage to get that award. And then as it got much later in her life, what I call them pilgrimages. Friends and family just started, because by that time she was living with Martha and Kirby, and friends and family just started making trips to her, so I call them pilgrimages. And this is her and her good friend Jim Lee from Lincoln, Nebraska, great guy, made a spectacular table for her that I think Sophia had for a while. I don't know if she still does. Great table. Jim makes his own instruments. He's good friends with Kelly and Donna Mulholland, still on the hill. A lot of you here and locally will know them. Super popular folks and great people. So Jim came to see her many times, and this is one of my faves. This is her oldest grandson, Richard Hogan, Bill's oldest boy. He rode down his motorcycle. He put Gran on there, look at her sit on top there, a little tiny person with her shades, with the big sunglasses. And I always love that picture. So there, and then my friend Paul Neeson from Calipatria High, California, came to visit her. She was like a second mom to him. And she told, when Paul came in, she said, "Paul, let me introduce you to my boyfriend, Johnny Walker," which was the name she gave for the Walker. You can see her in there getting around at Martha's house. I think all three of these pictures are at Martha's place. Excuse me. Well, okay, so we get towards the end of her life. She was lucid and clear-minded to the end, which is amazing. And this is called The Last Banjo, about the last time she played the banjo. Martha likes to tell the story. She was trying to help feed her and spilled some food on her chin. She was claiming, apologized. "So, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm such a klutz." And Graham patted her on the hand and said, "Well, that's all right, honey. It's all right to be a klutz." Pretty cool, huh? And then there's her stone, April 23rd, 1999. And she had what I call a quiet Methodist faith, which I appreciate very much. So her legacy is the book Singing in Zion, which is Bob Cochran, and it's all about her family and Aunt Helen. And then she didn't see the book, but she saw the galleys. And then also there's Bob helped create, along with help from Martha and Kirby, the Phydella Hogan Scholarship. My friends Neil and Katie Oxford contributed to it, and James River, where Martha worked, contributed to it also. And that, I believe, is what I wanted to cover in this video. And so the next one will be about her poetry, and that'll be video 3 in this process. And I'll thank you again for watching this one. Appreciate it very much. And I will see you with video 3. Bye for now.
Tonight I sit alone in the shadows. My mind takes me back to my home. So many years, so many roads traveled, so many friends, but always alone. Missing the home of my childhood. Memories of another time and place. Missing the home of my childhood. If only I could see my mother